HOA Cop sent his K-9 unit after my wife. Right there on our front porch. He screamed orders, the dogs barked, and my wife, she was just begging him to stop. He didn't know, my dad was the chief of police. And what happened next changed our neighborhood forever. Hey everyone! Welcome back to HOA Stories, the place where neighborhood power trips go wrong. I'm David, the guy who bought a perfect home in a perfect community. But when you've got an HOA with a badge and a K-9 unit, perfection turns ugly real fast. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that went too far, hit that subscribe button and drop BOOHOA in the comments below. Because this story is for you. Share it with anyone who's ever been bullied by a neighborhood rulebook. Now let me tell you how my wife ended up on the porch, and how my dad ended their game for good. It was a Saturday morning. Bright sunlight over the cul-de-sac. Kids riding bikes, sprinklers hissing, and my wife Amy watering the roses in our front yard. Then I heard the siren. Not a police car, just a black SUV with HOA enforcement painted on the side in gold. Yeah, they had a siren now. And a dog barking inside. I stepped out on the porch with my coffee. Officer Matthews, that's what he called himself, was already yelling before he even parked. "Ma'am, step away from the plants." Amy looked up, confused. "The plants," she said. "These are my roses." He got out, hand on his belt, radio crackling. Behind him, 2 German shepherds lunged in their cage. "Violation of HOA Code 37B, he barked. "Unauthorized modification to front yard flora." "You were warned." Amy laughed. "Warned?" She planted roses from Home Depot 2 weeks ago. No note, no letter, nothing. I started walking down the steps. "Officer, take it easy. It's just flowers." He looked at me like I just cursed the flag. "Sir, back inside your residence." That tone, the fake authority voice HOA types use when they think they're cops. Amy folded her arms. "You can't order me off my own yard." That did it. He radioed something in, and the SUV door opened. 2 K-9 dogs jumped out, muzzles off, teeth showing, ears up. Amy stepped back, hands raised. "Are you kidding me?" I pulled out my phone, started recording. "Sir," I said, "you're on camera." He smirked. "I know how to handle trespassers." I could see Amy's eyes watering. The dogs were inches away from her legs. She was terrified but trying not to cry. "Call them off," I yelled. He didn't. One of the dogs lunged forward, its claws scraped her jeans, ripping the fabric. She fell back on the porch, screaming. Blood ran down her knee. I dropped my coffee and ran. That's when he reached for his radio again, yelling something about resisting inspection. I was 5 seconds from punching him when I heard another voice behind me, firm, low, angry. "Officer Matthews." The cop froze. Because that voice, he knew it. Amy looked up from the ground. "Dad." And there he was. My dad. In his plain clothes. Badge on his belt. Chief of Police, City of Green Haven. He stepped between Amy and the dogs. "Leash those animals right now." Matthews blinked. "Sir, this is HOA jurisdiction." "Not when you set dogs on a civilian, it's not." He reached for the dog leads himself, yanked them away. The dogs sat immediately, perfectly trained but confused. My dad turned toward him, face cold. "Do you understand you just committed assault?" Matthews stammered. I was just enforcing." "You're done," Dad said. "Hand me your badge." The HOA cop looked like he'd just seen a ghost. People had come out of their houses now, neighbors watching, phones up, recording everything. Amy was crying in shock as I helped her up. Her hands were trembling. She whispered, "I did nothing wrong." Dad glanced at me. "Son, get her inside. I'll handle this." That was the moment everything changed on our street. HOA meetings stopped being polite. People started asking questions. And I started recording every single thing that happened next. Because if they could do this to Amy, What else were they hiding behind that neighborhood security badge? If your HOA acted like real cops, would you fight back or move out? Tell me in the comments. Dad didn't shout. He didn't need to. The look on his face said everything. That calm, quiet anger that only a real cop has. Matthews froze, dogs silent now. Neighbors whispering from porches. Cameras up, recording every second. My wife clung to me, her arms still shaking. Blood drying on her knee. And all I could think was, this was supposed to be a quiet neighborhood. Dad stepped closer to the HOA cop. Badge, he said again, voice steady. Matthews hesitated, then unhooked it, that fake gold badge that said HOA Enforcement Unit. He handed it over. Dad held it up to the light. Private security company hired by the HOA, he muttered. Not real law enforcement. No authority to use force. None. He turned to me. Son, you and Amy get this on record. Every photo, every detail. We'll need it. Amy wiped her face. What are you gonna do, Dad? Start where it hurts, he said. Paperwork. He filed a report that same afternoon. Assault with a dangerous animal. Impersonating an officer. Unauthorized use of law enforcement insignia. By Monday morning, the entire town knew. The HOA tried to clean it up fast. They called it a miscommunication. Said Matthews was overly enthusiastic about neighborhood safety. But it was too late. Everyone saw the video online. The comments section was wild. Half the people were furious. The other half were laughing at the idea of an HOA with attack dogs. Amy and I thought it was over. We were wrong. The next week, we got a letter. Certified mail. Envelope stamped with the HOA seal. Notice of fines. Code violations. They fined us $5,000 for defamation of the association and failure to maintain community harmony. Amy stared at it, jaw open. They can't fine us for telling the truth, she said. They can try, I told her. So I took it straight to Dad. He read it twice. Then laughed, that dry cop laugh. They just made it worse for themselves. He told me to sit tight. He was gonna make some calls. That night, 3 HOA board members showed up at our porch. In suits, pretending to be calm. Mr. and Mrs. Walker, the president said. We're sorry about what happened, truly, but posting that video online. I cut him off. You mean the video where your officer set dogs on my wife? He winced. That's not how we'd phrase it. Amy's voice cracked. Is that what you'd say if your wife was bleeding on the porch? He sighed. We just want to restore peace in the neighborhood. If you'd agree to remove the video. I stepped closer. Let me stop you right there, I said. You don't tell me what to post, and you don't use cops to scare people. That's when I noticed the camera on the side of their car. Recording us. Amy whispered, they're filming. They were trying to set us up now. To twist the story. To make us look like the problem. I smiled for their camera. And said it loud enough for the mic to catch. Go ahead and record, my dad's the chief of police. The HOA president's face went pale. They got in their car and drove off without a word. But it didn't stop there. Oh no. Next day, our mailbox was gone. Literally gone, post ripped out of the ground. Then we got another fine. Unapproved mailbox removal, $250. Amy laughed till she cried. Did they just vandalize our mailbox and fine us for it? Yeah, they did. So we set up our own camera, 24/7 surveillance. This time we caught them. 2 HOA patrol volunteers driving a golf cart at 2 a.m., sneaking around houses with flashlights, writing notes on clipboards like wannabe detectives. Dad saw the footage and said, "That's harassment. Let me handle this." By the next evening, the HOA office was surrounded, not by neighbors, but by real police cars. Turns out, Matthews, the so-called HOA cop, never returned the dogs to his company. He kept them, using them for private enforcement on HOA payroll. And get this, The HOA paid him from our dues. The news broke like wildfire. Local HOA under investigation for illegal police activity. It hit Facebook, Reddit, and the local paper all in one day. People started calling it the Suburban police scandal. Amy couldn't even go to the grocery store without someone asking, "You're the woman from the HOA video, right?" She'd just smile and say, "Yeah, I'm fine now." But they're not. But I wasn't done yet. Because something didn't add up. The HOA's official paperwork showed no contract for Matthews. No record of dog training, no permits for private enforcement. So who hired him? That's when Dad and I dug deeper. We found out Matthews was related to one of the board members. Nephew of the HOA president himself. He wasn't even certified security. He just wore an old uniform, slapped on a fake badge, and acted like he owned the neighborhood. Dad shook his head. "I've seen corruption in big cities, but this is something else." He opened a case file, officially. The HOA board was being investigated for misuse of funds and impersonation of police. And then, something strange happened. They offered us money. Yeah. The HOA tried to buy us off. A letter slipped under our door at night. No signature. Just typed words. "We can make this go away. $25,000 in exchange for privacy and peace." Amy read it twice. "Privacy and peace," she repeated. "They mean silence." I looked at her and said, "They have no idea who they're dealing with." That week, the HOA called an emergency community meeting. Everyone was invited. Amy wanted to go. Dad said no, it was a setup. But I went anyway. The meeting was in the community hall. Fluorescent lights flickering. Everyone whispering. When I walked in, everything went quiet. The HOA president stood on stage, fake smile plastered on his face. "Ah, Mr. Walker," he said. "Glad you could join us." I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. He started his speech, talking about unity, respect, and rebuilding trust. But all I could see was his hand shaking as he held the mic. Then he said it. "We've decided to dissolve the HOA Security Division effective immediately." People clapped. Some cheered. But I saw it in his eyes. That wasn't an apology. That was fear. And he had good reason to be afraid. Because the next morning, the police raided his office. Dad's unit led the operation. They seized documents, computers, and a stack of fake HOA police badges. Turns out, Matthews wasn't working alone. There was a whole network of neighborhood enforcers across the county, operating under fake HOA security companies. And ours was just the beginning. Amy hugged me that night on the porch. Her knee still had a scar. But her smile was back. "We didn't just stop them," she said. "We exposed them." I nodded. Yeah, but something still bothered me. Someone higher up had to approve those payments. Someone inside city records. Dad told me we weren't done yet. And when the truth finally came out, it would shake more than just our neighborhood. If your HOA tried to buy your silence after hurting someone you love, would you take the money or expose them to everyone? Comment below. The morning after the raid, our quiet neighborhood didn't feel so quiet anymore. Police tape around the HOA office. News vans parked at the entrance. Neighbors standing on lawns, whispering like it was Judgment Day. Amy made coffee, but neither of us drank it. We just stood by the window, watching officers carry out boxes of files and hard drives. Dad called around noon. "They found something," he said. His voice was tight, the kind he used when something serious was going down. "What kind of something?" asked. He sighed. "Payments. From outside the HOA. That made no sense." "Outside?" I said. "Like who?" "Developers," he said. "Private contractors. Even a real estate firm. Looks like your HOA was on someone's payroll." Amy leaned in, listening. "What would a developer want with an HOA?" she asked. Dad paused. "To control who lives there." The words hit hard. Suddenly, all the weird stuff made sense. The constant inspections. The threats. The pressure to move out. They weren't just enforcing rules. They were trying to push people out. That afternoon, 2 detectives came to our house. Not just to question us, to protect us. One of them showed me a folder. Inside were pictures of property listings, our street, our block, marked with red stickers that said, "Future Acquisition." Amy's name was on one. So was mine. I looked up at the detective. "You're telling me they were trying to scare us into selling?" He nodded. "Cheaper houses make cheaper buyouts. You and a few others were holding out. They wanted you gone." Amy whispered, "My roses, they started all this because of roses." The detective gave a sad smile. "They'll start with anything they can." That night, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. The same perfect lawns. The same white fences. But it didn't feel like home anymore. I passed by the HOA president's house, now dark and empty. A "for sale" sign leaned sideways on the front yard. The irony was almost funny. Matthews, the so-called HOA Cop, had vanished. Police were looking for him, but no one knew where he went. Amy joined me on the sidewalk, her arm hooked through mine. "You think it's over?" she asked. I wanted to say yes, but something in me knew it wasn't. Because 2 blocks down, a black SUV was parked. Engine running. No lights on. Amy froze. "Is that?" "Stay behind me," I said. The SUV drove off slowly. No plates. Just tinted windows and that same hum I'd heard before. They were watching us. Even after the raid. The next day, Dad came by in person. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. He'd been up all night going through files. He dropped a folder on my kitchen table. "Read that." It was a bank statement, not from the HOA, but from a shell company. Payments going to multiple addresses. One of them, ours. I frowned. "What's this?" He said, "They were paying for your silence before they even scared you." I stared at him. "You mean they had a plan for us?" He nodded. "They pick homeowners who won't conform, people they can intimidate or remove. You and Amy, you were on their list 6 months before the dog attack." Amy's hand shook as she read the line with her name. "Why us?" "Because your house backs onto the drainage lot," Dad said. "Developers want that land cleared for new construction." HOA was just their weapon. My stomach turned. All that talk about community standards, safety, rules. It was just business. Dirty, corrupt business. By the weekend, the news exploded. "HOA scandal tied to property developers," the headline said. Neighbors started turning on each other. Some defended the HOA. Others demanded it be dissolved completely. I didn't pick sides. I just wanted the truth out. But that night, someone tried to stop me. We woke up to the sound of glass breaking. The living room window shattered. A rock lay inside, wrapped in a piece of paper. Amy screamed. I picked it up. One line, printed in block letters. "Drop the story or lose your house." I ran outside, barefoot. No one there. Just the sound of crickets and a car speeding off into the dark. Dad came with 2 patrol cars within minutes. He was furious. "They crossed a line," he said. "We'll put a car out front 24/7. Amy cried on his shoulder. I stood there, fists clenched, staring at the broken glass. "Let them come," I muttered. "They picked the wrong family." 2 days later, I went to the HOA office myself. What was left of it? Papers everywhere. Files half-burned in trash bins. Someone had tried to destroy evidence. But in one folder, half-buried under receipts, I found something strange. A printed email chain. From HOA President to Enforcement Director, Green Haven Operations. Subject, Phase 2 Timeline. The message read, "After the Walker incident, public sentiment dropped. Proceed with soft evictions. Target properties on Elm and Creekside first." Soft evictions. That's what they called it. Amy was right behind me. She read it over my shoulder and whispered, They were doing this everywhere. We turned the file over to Dad. He handed it straight to the investigators. Within a week, the city shut the HOA down entirely. No board, no meetings, no more fake cops with dogs. But the damage was done. Half the neighborhood was moving away. Signs on lawns. For sale. For rent. For lease. Amy stood on the porch one night, looking at the empty houses. "This place used to feel alive," she said. "Now it's just ghosts." But there was one thing left, one mystery that still haunted me. Who was the enforcement director? The name was blacked out in every file. Dad said the FBI was digging into it now. Apparently, multiple HOAs across the state were tied to the same network. Same fake enforcement units. Same intimidation tactics. Amy asked me, "What happens if they come back?" I smiled. "They won't," I said. "Because this time, the whole country's watching." She smiled back, but her eyes said something else. Fear doesn't just go away. Not when you've seen men with badges act like they own your life. A month later, the neighborhood voted. They dissolved the HOA completely. No more dues. No more fake rules. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. The trust was gone. The laughter. The peace. Sometimes I still see the marks on the porch where Amy fell. Tiny scratches from the dog's claws. A reminder. Dad says the investigation is going national now. He's already been called to testify. And me? I'm still here. Still watching. Still making sure no one tries to rebuild what we tore down. Because if I've learned one thing from all this, it's that power in the wrong hands doesn't need a badge. Just permission. If you found out your HOA was secretly working for a developer to push families out, would you expose them or get out before it's too late? Tell me in the comments. It had been almost 2 months since the HOA shut down. The yellow tape was gone, the signs were down. But the silence still felt heavy, like everyone was afraid to breathe too loudly. Amy tried to get back to normal. She planted new flowers, painted the porch, even started baking again. But I could tell, she still jumped every time a car slowed down in front of the house. Dad checked in every night. Not as a police chief, just as a father who didn't trust the shadows anymore. Then one morning, he called and said, "David, you might want to sit down." I could hear papers rustling in the background. The feds traced the enforcement unit. You won't believe who ran it. My heart sank. Who? He hesitated. Alan Burke. I froze. Burke. He said, "Yeah. Does that name mean something to you?" I didn't answer for a few seconds. Because it did. Alan Burke had been my boss 10 years ago. A security contractor. The same guy who taught me how to write incident reports and deal with non-compliant residents. Back then, he was all about control, order, authority. But he wasn't a cop. Just a man obsessed with power. When he got fired for falsifying certifications, I never saw him again. Now, he was the man behind the fake HOA enforcers. I sat there staring out the window, gripping the phone. "So, what now?" I asked. Dad said, "The Bureau's setting up a task force. They think Burke's network runs through multiple states, using HOAs to seize property under the radar. He launders money through property management companies." I rubbed my face. He always said he'd find a way to own neighborhoods someday. Dad said, "Looks like he did." That evening, a local news crew showed up. They wanted to interview us, the family who stood up to the HOA. Amy didn't want to do it, but I said yes. People needed to know what was really happening. When the cameras rolled, I told everything. About the dogs, the intimidation, the payments, the threats. About how an entire neighborhood was almost stolen from within. It aired that night at 9 p.m. By morning, it had gone viral. Headlines everywhere. HOA enforcement scandal spreads nationwide. Fake officers tied to real estate scheme. Our little town became the center of a national investigation. And then, the emails started coming in. Hundreds of homeowners from other states, all telling similar stories. Fake warnings, threats, sudden foreclosures. All under the same contractor name, Burke Security Solutions. A week later, Dad came over with a new case file. Feds got a location, he said. Warehouse on the edge of town. Used as a training site. Amy looked terrified. You're not going there, are you? Dad shook his head. Not you. But we'll take a team in tomorrow morning. Phil. I couldn't sleep. Because I knew Alan. He wouldn't go down without making noise. The next morning, I drove to the site anyway. I stayed back, parked behind a gas station, binoculars on the dash. SWAT trucks surrounded the old building. Engines idling. Dogs barking. Officers shouting. Then, a loud crash. The sound of doors being rammed open. Minutes later, they dragged Burke out in handcuffs. Same cold eyes. Same smirk. He looked older, but that arrogance hadn't aged a day. Even from a distance, he spotted me. And when our eyes met, he smiled, that same mocking smile I used to hate. Then he mouthed 2 words. Too late. That night, I told Dad what I saw. He didn't like it. Too late for what? He said. We didn't have to wait long for the answer. 2 days later, the FBI server room where evidence was stored caught fire. Electrical malfunction, they said. But Dad knew better. Someone inside's protecting him, he muttered. A week later, half the case files disappeared from digital archives. Just gone. Amy started panicking again. What if he gets out? She whispered. What if they let him walk? I didn't know how to answer. Because the system that was supposed to protect us was suddenly quiet. Too quiet. Then something stranger happened. A letter arrived, no stamp, no return address. Just our names written in neat handwriting. Inside was a single flash drive. Amy wanted to throw it away. Dad wanted to hand it to the bureau. But my gut told me to look first. So I plugged it in. A single video file popped up. It was dated 2 weeks before Burke's arrest. He was sitting in an office, smirking at the camera. If you're watching this, he said, then you've learned too much. You think the HOA was my operation? No. It was just one branch. The real plan is already funded. Look closer, David. You'll see. Then the screen went black. Amy gasped. How does he even know your name? I stared at the monitor. Because behind him, in the video background, was a wall of framed photos. And one of them was me. It was an old company photo, back when I worked for him. He'd kept it. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every light from a passing car felt like someone watching. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. You can't protect everyone, Chief's son. I ran downstairs, heart pounding. Dad was already awake, his phone in hand. He'd gotten the same text. We both looked at each other. This wasn't over. The next day, Dad arranged to move Amy and me to a safe location for a while. But Amy refused. This is our home, she said firmly. I won't run from men who hide behind badges and paperwork. She had fire in her voice, something I hadn't heard in months. So we stayed. And every night after that, I checked the locks twice, looked out every window, and waited for something, anything, to happen. A few weeks later, Dad came back with a grim look. They found something in Burke's house, he said. A map. He laid it on the table. It was a blueprint of our entire subdivision. Each house marked with color codes. Red meant removed. Green meant sold. And ours was marked unfinished. Amy's hands trembled. What does that mean? Dad looked me in the eye. It means he's not done with you. That night, I sat on the porch, same spot where this all began. The air was still. The neighborhood quiet. Too quiet. I looked across the street. The old HOA sign, now faded and crooked, creaked in the wind. I whispered to myself, "You wanted control, Burke, but not this time." Because I'd decided. I wasn't just going to survive this story. I was going to finish it. If you discovered the mastermind behind your HOA's corruption was someone you once trusted, Would you confront them or disappear before they could find you again? It had been 3 weeks since Dad showed me the map. 3 quiet, uneasy weeks. The kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, just tension that hides under your skin. Amy tried to move on again. She really did. But I could tell, every time the mail truck stopped in front of our house, she froze. Every time a new car drove by, she'd pull back the curtains just to make sure. I told her, "It's over, Amy. Burke's behind bars." But even I didn't believe it when I said it. One afternoon, I was out fixing the fence when a black sedan pulled up slowly across the street. Tinted windows. No plates. I stood there, waiting for whoever was inside to get out. But no one did. It just sat there for maybe 30 seconds. Then rolled away. That night, I couldn't shake it off. I checked our cameras, but the system had glitched. No footage. It was like the car never existed. Dad came by later. He looked tired, older somehow. "I've been talking to the bureau," he said. "They found Burke's encrypted drives. There's mention of something called Phase 2. "Phase 2? I asked. He nodded. "Yeah. And your name pops up again." I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up in my office, reading old HOA documents, invoices, bank statements, anything that might connect the dots. Around midnight, I found something strange. A property management company, Cedarline Developments. New name, new logo, but same registration address as Burke's old office. Their website was simple, just a landing page for neighborhood renewal programs. And one of the listed clients was a subdivision 5 miles away. Oak Ridge Estates. Amy walked in, rubbing her eyes. "You're still up." I turned the screen toward her. "Look at this. It's Burke's company, rebranded. And they're already operating again." She frowned. "But how?" "He's in prison." I shook my head. "Maybe. But someone else is running his playbook." The next morning, I drove out to Oak Ridge. It was a quiet, gated community. Newer homes, manicured lawns, smiling neighbors waving from driveways. Too perfect. At the gate, a uniformed guard stopped me. "Good morning, sir. Do you have a resident pass?" I glanced at his badge. It didn't say security. It said Community Enforcement Division. I forced a smile. "Oh, I'm just looking for a friend. New homeowner, Amy Ross." He scanned his tablet. "I'm sorry, sir. No resident by that name." I leaned a bit closer, pretending to read the screen. And there it was, at the top corner of his tablet, the logo. A gold triangle with 3 letters inside. BSS. Burke. Security. Solutions. My blood ran cold. That evening, I showed Dad the footage from my dashcam. He stared at the logo, jaw tightening. They're rebuilding his network. Same methods. Different names. Amy was pacing the room. "So what are we supposed to do? Call the news again? No one's gonna believe it twice." Dad looked at me. "This time, we don't tell anyone until we have proof. Real proof." So we started digging quietly. Emails, bank trails, shell companies. It all led to one man, Michael Grant. He was listed as the CEO of Cedarline. But when Dad ran his background, he found something chilling. Grant used to work under Burke. As his assistant. 2 days later, I drove to the city where Cedarline's headquarters were supposed to be. A small office park, normal, quiet. But when I walked in, the receptionist's smile froze when I said Burke's name. "Sir, you need to leave," she whispered. Then she glanced toward the security camera in the corner, like someone was watching her. I left before causing a scene. But I knew then, the fear hadn't died. It had just moved. That night, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Same voice message format as before, robotic, low-pitched. "Stop digging, David. You won't like what you find." Amy begged me to delete it. Dad told me to forward it to the bureau. But I didn't do either. I replayed it, over and over, because there was something familiar about the tone. Something in the way the voice said my name. It almost sounded like Burke himself. Days turned into weeks. Oak Ridge started showing up in the news. Small incidents. Noise complaints. Car windows smashed. A community enforcement patrol, going door to door late at night. Same pattern. Same script. I told Dad, we have to stop it before someone else gets hurt. He agreed, but warned, if we move too early, we'll lose jurisdiction again. They'll bury us in paperwork. So we waited. Until one morning, Amy walked into the kitchen holding a letter. David, this came in the mail. I opened it and froze. It was an invitation from the Oak Ridge Homeowners Alliance. They wanted me to attend an informational session about HOA community leadership. Amy's voice cracked. They know who we are. That night, Dad came over again. He read the letter twice, then said, "This isn't an invitation. It's bait." I asked, "So what do we do?" He sighed. "We go. But not unprepared. We planned it carefully. Hidden cameras, GPS trackers, backup units parked nearby. If it was a trap, we'd spring it back on them." The meeting was held in a new model home, bright lights, staged furniture, everything picture-perfect. Maybe 20 people inside, all smiling politely. But there was tension in the air, like everyone was reading from a script. Then a man stepped up to the podium. Tall, confident, wearing a dark blazer. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Michael Grant." His eyes scanned the room, and stopped when they reached me. "Some of you may already know our mission," he continued, "to bring order back to our neighborhoods, to keep things under control." He smiled. The same smirk I'd seen on Burke's face years ago. The same tone. The same arrogance. Dad was right. This was Burke's operation, reborn. After the meeting, I walked up to him. "Grant," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He smiled again. "David, I was hoping you'd come." He leaned in close, his voice low. "You think you stopped Burke?" He stopped himself. "You just sped it up." I stared at him. "He's in prison." Grant chuckled. "Are you sure about that?" He turned away before I could reply. And I swear, for a moment, I saw something glinting in his hand. A flash drive. He slipped it into his jacket and walked out the back door. I rushed outside, but by the time I reached the parking lot, he was gone. No car. No headlights. Just silence. Dad's voice came through the earpiece. "David, what happened?" I took a deep breath. He knows everything. And Burke might not even be in prison. That night, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the horizon. The lights from Oak Ridge flickered in the distance, clean, organized, perfect. Too perfect. I whispered to myself, if this is Phase 2, what's Phase 3? If you found out your enemy's plan didn't die, it evolved under a new name, would you expose it to the world or fight it from the shadows? I couldn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grant's face, that same smirk Burke used to wear before he ruined lives. Phase 2 wasn't about power anymore, it was about control. Dad called me the next morning. "They found something," he said. "The prison logs. Burke hasn't checked in for 3 weeks." "What do you mean, hasn't checked in?" Dad's tone hardened. "He's missing, David." It was like déjà vu. Same fear. Same silence. Only this time, I wasn't going to wait for the HOA to come knocking. I drove to the old HOA office downtown, the one that used to belong to Burke. It was supposed to be empty now. But as I turned the corner, I saw the lights on. A single bulb glowing inside. I parked across the street and waited. After a few minutes, a man stepped out, hoodie, gloves, carrying a metal briefcase. He didn't see me. I followed. He crossed the alley, stopped at a dumpster, and dropped the case inside. Then he walked away fast, head down. The second he disappeared around the corner, I ran for it. The case was locked, heavy. But when I shook it, something rattled inside. I brought it home, laid it on the kitchen table. Amy stood behind me, arms crossed. "David, this is insane." "I know," I said, "but if Burke's missing, this could explain why." I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, papers, a notebook, and a small black flash drive. No label. Dad came over within the hour. He plugged the drive into his old laptop, the one not connected to any network. A folder appeared, Project Phase 3. He clicked it. A single video file loaded. We exchanged a look. Then he pressed play. The video was shaky, recorded on a body cam. Burke's voice came through first. Testing begins tomorrow. The council approved full deployment. Then another voice, a woman's, calm but cold. We'll start in Oak Ridge. The prototype enforcement units are ready. Dad froze the frame. On screen, rows of black SUVs, identical to the HOA vehicles, parked in a warehouse. Only these had new markings. CAD. Community Adaptive Division. Dad, I whispered. That's the same car that watched our house. He zoomed in. Each SUV had a small camera dome mounted on top. Facial recognition. License plate scanners. And under the logo, a slogan. Order through obedience. Amy gasped. They're building a surveillance HOA? Dad nodded slowly. Not just building it. Deploying it. We watched the rest of the clip. Burke stood next to a screen filled with data, heat maps of neighborhoods, color-coded in red and green. The goal, he said, is full behavioral compliance through incentive and penalty systems. Every resident tracked. Every violation flagged automatically. If they don't conform, the woman added, the system recommends escalation. Dad whispered, escalation meaning? The video answered for him. At the end, the camera turned toward a kennel. Rows of cages. K-9 units barking, restless. Electronic collars glinting under fluorescent light. Burke smiled at the camera. This time, no mistakes. The screen went black. Amy covered her mouth. Oh my God! Dad exhaled slowly. They're turning HOAs into private police networks. One neighborhood at a time. I stared at the blank screen. So that's Phase 3. He nodded. And guess who's funding it? He pulled out one last paper from the briefcase, a contract with a government seal at the top. It was signed by someone we both knew. Councilman Reed Whitmore. The same politician who pushed the original HOA law through years ago. The next morning, Dad went to his office downtown. He wanted to meet Whitmore face to face. Amy begged me not to go with him, but something in my gut said he shouldn't be alone. When we got there, Whitmore's secretary told us he wasn't in. But his car was parked out back. We waited in the lobby. An hour passed. Then Dad's phone buzzed. A message. Stop digging or you'll lose more than your HOA. No number. Just that. He looked at me. They're watching us. That night, Amy and I packed a few things. We thought about leaving town, just disappearing. But I couldn't. Not when I knew what they were building. Not when I'd seen that warehouse. So I did something reckless. I went back. It was midnight. I parked a mile away from the Cedar Line facility. Used the back fence to sneak in, same one they used when they raided our old HOA office. The warehouse lights flickered as I moved between the rows of vehicles. All of them identical, polished, silent. Every SUV had a mounted scanner and an emblem stamped in chrome. CAD, Order through obedience. I opened one of the rear doors. Inside, monitors, laptops, digital logs of resident names, photos, even fines scheduled for non-compliance. They were already active. Some of the names I recognized. People from our old street. Neighbors who had moved away. Only now they were listed under a new label, classified subject. I copied everything onto my own drive and turned to leave. But before I reached the exit, a voice stopped me. Looking for something, David? I turned. Michael Grant stood there, flanked by 2 guards. He was smiling. Come. You really shouldn't be here. I said nothing. He walked closer. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just noise in the system. We're cleaning up chaos. You're replacing freedom with fear, I said. Grant chuckled. Freedom. You think freedom works in a neighborhood where people can't even agree on fence color? He gestured toward the vehicles. This is order. And when it's complete, nobody will question authority again. He reached for his pocket. The flash drive. He held it up. Phase 3 is already live, he said. And you just volunteered to be our first test. Before I could react, one of the guards lunged. We struggled. My camera fell, cracking against the floor. Then Dad's voice echoed from behind. Drop it. Gun drawn. Badge out. The guards froze. Grant smirked. Chief of police, still playing neighborhood hero? Dad ignored him. Step away from my son. Grant raised his hands slowly. You can't stop progress, old man. Dad fired a warning shot into the air. Try me. Grant's smirk finally faded. He nodded toward his men. They backed away. We left the warehouse with everything, the drives, the footage, the proof. By morning, federal agents had raided the entire facility. Grant was gone. Vanished. Dad said, he'll surface again. They always do. And I just stared at the sunrise over the neighborhood, thinking how fast a dream of safety can turn into a prison. If your own neighborhood started watching you, tracking your life in the name of order, would you fight back or would you conform? The morning after the raid, our street felt quiet again. Too quiet. For the first time in months, there were no patrol cars, no HOA officers, no dogs barking from tinted SUVs. Just the sound of sprinklers and the smell of fresh-cut grass. You'd think I'd feel relief. But I didn't. Because even though the trucks were gone, their shadows were still here. Dad said the Bureau had what they needed. The files, the flash drives, the contracts, everything. He told me, "It's over, David. You did it." But the way he said it didn't sound like victory. It sounded like warning. Amy was quiet all week. She barely spoke. I caught her once standing by the living room window, watching the street. When I asked what she was looking at, she said, "I don't know. I just keep expecting them to come back." I didn't tell her I felt the same. Every time I walked past the porch, I saw that spot where the K-9 lunged at her. That small crack on the floorboard still there. A reminder of how it all started. A few days later, Dad came by again. He looked tired, his uniform wrinkled, eyes red. He said, "They're cleaning up the aftermath. The raids exposed a lot." Turns out there were at least 5 other communities under Burke's control. 5? I asked. He nodded. Some using the same enforcement model. Some worse. Then he took a sip of his coffee and added quietly, "Burke's still missing." My stomach tightened. "You're serious?" "Completely." He set the cup down. Grant's files mention a failsafe. Something called the Watchtower. We think Burke had a backup network, off-grid. That night, I went out for a drive. No real reason. Just needed air. The streets were empty. The kind of empty that makes you feel like you're driving through a dream. I stopped at the old HOA office, boarded up now, locked tight. The "For Lease" sign swung in the wind. But when I looked closer, I noticed something new. A small sticker near the door handle. A gold triangle. Barely visible. CAD. My hands started to shake. I peeled the sticker off, but underneath it was another layer. A QR code. I scanned it with my phone. It opened a website. Blank screen. Just one sentence. "We keep neighborhoods safe." And under it, a blinking red dot. I dropped my phone like it burned me. The page closed instantly. No history, no cache, nothing. When I told Dad, he stared at me like I was losing it. Then he said quietly, "David, maybe it's not over. Maybe it never will be." The following week, the story broke on national news. Private HOA police network exposed in Suburban scandal. They ran the footage. The raids. Even the clip from Burke's Drive, edited, but still damning. Our street became famous overnight. Reporters camped outside. Neighbors who once avoided us now wanted interviews. Amy hated it. She said, We wanted justice, not fame. I told her, sometimes they come together. But the truth was, I didn't feel like either. I felt watched. One night, I got an envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo. It was me, standing in our yard, 2 nights ago. Taken from across the street. On the back, 3 words. Nice lawn, neighbor. I showed Dad. He took the photo without a word and slipped it into a folder. Then he looked at me with that same exhausted face. Son, they're not gone. They're adapting. He told me the Bureau had traced fragments of the CAD network to servers overseas. Encrypted, anonymous, impossible to shut down. They're recruiting new communities under new names, he said. They're spreading it digitally now. It's not about fences and mailboxes anymore. It's about data. Weeks passed. We tried to move on again, really tried this time. Amy started her garden again, smaller this time. No roses. Just lavender and mint. I got back to work. Fixed what I could around the house. Pretended life was normal. But sometimes, late at night, I'd see a car stop at the corner. No lights, no sound. Just watching. And when I'd blink, it would be gone. One afternoon, Amy called me from the kitchen. David, come look at this. She was holding the mail. Among the bills was a glossy brochure. No logo. Just a photo of smiling families. The title said, Introducing Neighborhood Harmony Initiative. At the bottom, a small gold triangle. CAD. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. They're really doing it, I said. They're coming back, just under another name. Amy didn't laugh. She just said, So what do we do now? That night, I sat on the porch, same spot where everything began. The street was quiet, the air warm. I could hear kids playing down the block. Dogs barking in the distance. Normal life. The illusion of peace. I opened my laptop, connected to a secure line Dad gave me. Then I uploaded everything. Every file. Every video. Every secret. I sent it to every journalist, every watchdog, every agency that would listen. And when it was done, I closed the lid, leaned back, and whispered to myself, let's see how they handle Phase 4. A week later, a strange letter arrived. Typed. No signature. Just one line. You can't expose what's already everywhere. I folded it slowly, and smiled. Because that meant they were scared. And that meant I'd already won. Amy came out to sit beside me. She rested her head on my shoulder. Do you think it's really over? She asked. I looked at the dark street, the flickering lamppost, the shadows that stretched across the lawns. No, I said quietly. It's never over, not in neighborhoods like ours. I took one last look at our house. The porch light glowing soft and warm. Then I whispered, if they come back, we'll be ready. If your neighborhood started turning into a system that tracks and controls everything you do, would you fight it or would you let it watch, just to feel safe?